You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your number one source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Keith. Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AfterBuzz TV's Murder in the First After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Murder in the First After Show.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Murder in the First After Show. At last, it is Monday night, again here on AfterBuzzTV.com. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Murder in the First. Season 1, Episode 5, of course, is called Pants on Fire. I'm your host, Bobby DeMuro. JB and Marina are out tonight. They didn't get the memo. We're back at work. They're still enjoying the holiday weekend. They will be back next week. Joining me is my co-host, Monse Balanos, and we have a very special guest today. He plays Detective David Molk on Murder in the First, in addition to a ton of other acting work. Raphael Sbarge, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sitting on the panel. We didn't want to put you on the couch far away from us because
You're one special. Of us. I feel special.
We're about to grill you. So talk to us in 20 minutes, see if you still feel special.
He's going to be walking out in 20 minutes.
Talk about Pants on Fire, huh?
Seriously. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to get to the show in a second and go break down the episode like we always do. The first thing I want to know, Raphael, I want to ask you a couple things now that we've got you here. Talk to us about filming this thing. Obviously, with Bochco doing this, NYPD Blue veteran, you kind of know what you're going to get in a good detective show. But what has the experience been like for you, somebody who has already worked a ton in this industry? Is it same old, just another show? I mean, is it a little bit different? What's going on set on Murder in the First?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing, it's funny because I was actually at an event where Stephen was talking to a bunch of bloggers about the show, and someone said to him straight up, he said, you know, Mr. Bochco, you've been in with a lot of remarkable casts, and you've sort of seen a lot of great actors, and what sets this cast different than other? Now, he said this, and he said this publicly, so I'm repeating what he said, but he said, they said, you know, how is this cast different than other casts? He said, they're no assholes. So I can say straight up, there's some wonderful people on this cast, and it was so freaking fun just hanging out. In addition to that, look, you know, this fine gentleman, along with Eric Lodal, who's obviously he's partnered with, they're both executive producers in the show, but you know what they've done is there's an understanding of what the math is for this equation, right? Which is taking a case and then really sort of leaving enough clues so that you sort of, wait, hold a second. Oh, no. So that you're kind of always on your toes, right? And they're, in this case, you are in the master's hands, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that you sort of feel. Was great ease and great sort of like comfort in the fact that we all knew that we were in the hands of a master.
Now, what about Detective Molk here? Because you are very, maybe provide a lot of moments of levity in otherwise sometimes a very serious place. And the cleanse in episode 1 that we all laughed about, the karaoke tonight, is it a conscious decision on your part when you see the script and you see these things to say, that's my role, to kind of maybe be a little funny or a little off color or whatever as a detective? Or, I mean, is something serious coming for you? Not to get too far into predictions, but you have had serious moments too. Is something more serious coming for Detective Molk where we're going to say, hey, we thought he was kind of a funny guy and just sort of an insignificant, another character, another detective, but there's actually a serious thing here and we need to investigate?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we saw some of that was it last week, I guess, with the gal that he's sort of interested in,
with
who's
Hannah,
the potential witness,
right?
And how she put him in this sort of bind of being, you know, wanting to sort of leverage her friendship against his role as a cop, right? And he obviously takes his job very seriously. So even though he has this levity, you know that he really cares about what he does. Again, one of the things that has been really wonderful with the writing is, while they're not reinventing the wheel here, right? This is not, redesigning. I mean, there's a lot of cop dramas out there, right? Yeah. But you know, how do you do it within a form that we know? And how do you tell a great story, and how do you keep it interesting, and particularly for an audiences who are familiar with this type of form? It seems like, you know, every few years there's a show sort of in this vein, but how do you do it differently enough so that you maintain people's interest, and you've got a very sophisticated viewing audience out there, right? I mean, they've seen a million shows. So what he's done, and which is what I appreciate in the writing, is that while we might recognize the characters, he seems to give each of them kind of a little bit of a spin, so that while you might go, oh, that's that guy, you might go, oh, that's interesting. There's more going on there than I initially thought. And I think he's also sort of clearly cast a lot of, I mean, you know, you look at the list of the cast list. I mean, between Taye Diggs, Kathleen Robertson, James Cromwell, Tom Felton, you know, Richard Schiff. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, these are top players, right? So what he's done is he's cast really good actors who you know will bring more to the part. Yeah. Like tonight's episode, for example, Richard Schiff doing that great speech in the courtroom. Yeah. And we were talking about when we were watching it. You know, that was a huge mouthful, right? But he put all sorts of wonderful spins on that are just Richard. And that's what you know when you hire someone like Richard, because he's so smart and he's got a lot of that wolf kind of like, let me at him in his work. You know it's going to be more interesting than what might even be on the page. Yeah. So I think the combination of the writing, where he's looking, you know, to kind of open things up, and then I think again this, you know, some of the choices of these actors.
Now, tell me a little bit about that, because the choices always interest me in every show and everything we ever see. You never know, as a viewer, in the viewing audience, never knows what's scripted, what's unscripted, how much maybe flexibility you have. So, what is it day to day, week to week on that set? Do you get the script and they say this is how it's going to be, stay within the lines, or are you kind of able to color outside the lines and sort of extemporaneously, essentially improv a little bit, maybe,
and make it your character and yourself, essentially?
Yeah. You know what? I mean. Well, there's a lot of answers to that question. Generally, they're pretty tight about really wanting to stick to the lines. There are certain moments where you can kind of riff a little bit. You know, there was that whole, I think in that first episode where I said, you know, tastes like this. You know, don't knock until you try it. I mean, I think they let the camera roll a little bit, and I kind of threw in a few more. But in general, and then you've got 4 or 5, and they pick what they want, right? Yeah. But in general, obviously, the writers care deeply about the writing, what's on the page. They've suffered every period, every comma, every ender. But and some shows are a little bit more sort of hyper sticklers about it, and others are a little like, yeah, well, that's kind of the spirit of it. You know, obviously somewhere in the middle there where you can sort of feel like, you know, I mean, I come from the theater. Obviously the text is very important to me, and sort of having it word perfect. But what you do, what does happen is that you, as you progress through a show, you begin to kind of get an idea of what your guy is, you know, and so you will see in rehearsals, for example, where a certain actor goes, you know what, this seems like he should say that. I'm not going to say this. Why don't you give him that line, and then I'll say this. And so that we kind of sometimes negotiate that. Now, when changes like that happen, you have to get the producer on the phone and say, are you okay with this? Right. You know, we're going to make a change. Everyone wants to make sure that, you know, no one's just changing this willy-nilly. Yeah. But you obviously want to court magic. That's what the camera captures, is that miracle the first time. You know, the scene between Hildy and English at the bar. I love that scene, and I remember going in because I had to do a little dubbing. It's called looping for my part of the singing stuff. You know, because we were supposed to be doing cat calls and stuff in the background, and we went and laid some other stuff in. But I remember watching it in the looping room, and I came back and told them on the set, wow, guys, you could have fried an egg on that scene. That was smoking hot.
Yeah, and well, we were watching it. Not to interrupt you, you said that's chemistry right there.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. As
Didn't
we were
you feel
watching
it?
That.
Right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Right in the moment.
Yeah, no, it was great. And that's what the camera captures, right? It captures that sort of that happening right now. Yeah. And it kind of just electrifies you when it happens.
I'm wondering too about when we were watching this episode just now, which we will get to in just a second, break it down. I'm interested to hear what you think about all these other characters, because you mentioned you don't see the scenes you're not in, obviously. So this is sort of a first viewing for you too. So this will be interesting to have your view on the panel. But one thing that stuck with me is every time you're watching, every scene, you're saying, this is so beautifully shot. This looks amazing. This looks beautiful. It was surprising to me. We think it's beautifully shot because we don't know. We're outsiders. But for an insider like you to see it, talk to me about how this thing is being shot, maybe the cinematography. Is it unique to you from what TV is doing, or is it just conscious decisions by the filmmakers in little moments to do something beautiful that you see and it kind of grabs you in a unique way?
Yeah, well, you know, maybe you don't think about it perhaps when you're watching. I mean, there's so many things that go into making a story, right? And there is a visual language that goes into telling a story. What happens is the visual language gets set in the pilot. And in this case, Tommy Schlamme, who did a little show called West Wing.
Never heard of it.
Another one called Sports Night. And, a few other, a couple Emmys or something or other. But he shot the pilot. And what he did was he came in and really created what was kind of this very, I want to say, visceral visual language for telling this. So if you notice, the camera kind of is moving a lot, and it has a creeping kind of quality, and you kind of always, it doesn't just sort of sit, kind of plop down. I mean, sometimes if certain shows, you'll notice, and because I work in the medium, I think about this a lot. If there's if there's a scene between the three of us, they'll do a master shot, which is the three of us, and then they'll come in and do plop it down here, plop it down here, plop it down there, and usually it's pretty static. If you notice, it's always kind of doing this, right? And you don't really, and it's moving and kind of changing. And so as a result, it gives you, as a viewer, it's affect you on a subliminal level, but it really gives you this like, oh, what's going to happen? It's kind of creepy, right? I mean, the camera's creeping and it's creepy. So what he did was he set this language, and then all the other directors after that then really worked to sort of really maintain that, and are incredible DP. So, what I am, again, when you have someone who knows the form this well, again with Bochco and all the other folks that he assembled, the ability to kind of play within that form and then do something that's sort of different, interesting, and again smart enough, because as you've said about from your audience who watches your show, people are watching these details, and really hold all of us accountable to these details, and I think that there's some very sophisticated audience members out there, and particularly these days in this remarkable period where there's just every night like, oh my God, there's that show, oh my God, there's this show, that's all of our DVRs are burning up, right? So what this means is that we have to really play to the highest denominator, and again, I mean, it's cool to be in a show that you kind of really admire as well. I mean, I can honestly say now, 5 episodes in, I'm a fan of the show. This is a cool show.
It's one last thing before we get to the show, because you kind of mentioned it, how this is such an era. Maybe a lot of people call it a golden era of television because a lot of stuff that's on, but it's also such a digital era that cameras and filmmaking equipment have become so mainstream that anybody can go, I have a ton of great camera equipment myself, but I'm not ready to film something like this. But the point is, a lot of people maybe look at shows like this and say, how would you film that? How could I have filmed that with my equipment, whatever it is? And the average viewer, do you find the average viewer is maybe more intelligent to those things than they were 15 years ago?
Oh yeah, I think we are. I think because you can make movies for tens of dollars now, right?
Yeah.
So which is incredible, courtesy of that little device that sits on our desk. I mean, and films that have been shot on iPhones, and that have won Oscars, and so I think we all have, and then also video games and all the other ways in which there's so much content that we're constantly sort of absorbing. So I do believe that we've all become sort of kind of the standard. Just sort of kind of dump kind of TV doesn't really play anymore.
Yeah.
So again, you have to ask yourself, and that's why you hire someone like Tommy to come in and kind of really like, okay, how are we going to really make this interesting? How are we going to really take it past what we would initially? And again, that's what I mean. It, every scene you're a little bit on edge. It's like, oh, why do I feel this way? God, I feel, and again, that's because the camera's doing what it's doing.
You saw our reactions to a couple scenes.
Yeah, you're like, whoa, no.
You should have seen us last week when Hildy and Mulligan, or when Hildy and English kissed. We lost it.
Oh, lost
in the
it.
viewing room
So
last week.
funny, yeah.
I was waiting for it to happen again, but I kind of wanted it this time.
Well,
I
let's
was
talk
like
about it
rooting
this
for
time.
it. I was like, go!
But isn't it wild, because normally I think of how many like shows like Moonlight or what, years and years before that happened, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And they hit it on the 4th episode, right?
And I didn't agree with it, but it didn't feel rushed. So there's a difference there.
But it certainly surprised you, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there yelling with everybody else, trust me.
Yeah, we were just so shocked. That's what it was. Yeah,
Right,
it was so.
right,
We were so
right.
shocked, but it was natural. It felt real. That
Well, let's-
wasn't the issue. It was just like, why?
Let's talk about that relationship in relation to the show today, the episode today. Having seen this now, Hildy and English never really quite have that conversation about, Are we okay? Whatever. Until they get to the bar, until alcohol is involved. And I know that the choice wasn't to make them be 3 seats to the wind drunk. I don't think that was the case for either one of them. But there's still alcohol involved. They're in a loud bar. This isn't probably the mature place to have a conversation. And they have this conversation in the relationship, and she says to him, you know, we're good, are we good, or whatever. And he says, we're always good.
Yeah,
So
it was such a good reading.
to me, it's almost like English, because of what happened to his wife in the first episode, because of what's going on with his life, and they know that this was a mistake, doesn't want to broach the subject. And I got the faintest feeling that, according to Mulligan, they're not good. Am I wrong?
I didn't get that. No, I didn't get that at all.
Really?
Yeah,
I got just a little bit.
No, I just think that this is a woman's perspective.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Go ahead.
This is from a woman's perspective. I think she was like wanting to talk about it, wanting it to develop into something. So she kept saying, if you notice, she kept kind of saying the same thing over, like, are we good? Are we okay? That's a girl thing, because we want to elaborate. We don't like one word answers. We don't like 2 words. We want to talk about it. We want to discuss it. She, I think, was trying to get him to elaborate, to speak on it more than just 3 words. I think she wanted to really dissect it. As a woman, that's what I thought. And maybe she seemed a little irritated because he just kept saying yes. You know, but I don't think she's not good. And
she's already been interrupted twice. Once by Detective Molk, in the court case, not really Detective Molk, but the other time by Sally Smoot. So she's been interrupted twice by this. 3rd time's the charm. Rule of 3s in television, right? Yep. 3rd time's the charm, and she wants to know this, and he never gives her the satisfaction. She said, though, kiss and make up, or whatever it was. Kiss, forget about it. So, and I know that's a joke, but behind every joke there is some truth.
Exactly.
But then here's the thing. You know, it's interesting when he sings that song. And then she obviously, it gets a little too hot in there for her, right? Mm-hmm. You know, at last, right? and she's like, oh, I gotta get out of here, right? So she clearly, it's complicated. We know she's single. We know she's divorced. Right. We know she's out there dating. It's complicated, right? So
I think at that moment we realized she maybe has genuine feelings for him. The fact that she couldn't sit there and keep listening to him, that she had to leave, just shows there's more to it.
Well, and that's the thing. She is such a professional. We've talked about this, Raphael, how the way that Mulligan and English are portrayed are obviously such professional detectives. They're not new. They're not rookies. They're not unprofessional or mature. They know that this is wrong to go down this path. And even if she may have feelings for him, which I think she does, she knows she can't go down that path. So she needs to leave. And so she can't be there. And it's a conscious decision by the writers to choose Etta James, to choose At Last, as opposed to doing, Little John or Charlie Daniels or whatever else he wanted to do. That was Etta James in a very conscious decision. So
and let me just put a shout out, because it's T-Bone Burnett who's the music supervisor. So there's a you've got about as heavy weight a hitter as you possibly can as a music person. So there's a lot of conscious thought about what all the music choices are as well.
Yeah, how about your music choice in this episode?
How about it, right?
Because you were telling us quite the story of that you had about 4 days to learn this, and no pressure. T-Bone Burnett's there, and he's going to watch you and make a judgment about you.
He came on the set, and we talked on the phone. He could not have been nicer and sweeter. Talk about a legend, right?
Yeah.
And he just was really supportive, and he basically sort of gave me some ideas about what he wanted to do. It was a 12-bar blues. We only ultimately saw a piece of what it is, but really, Molk really really tees it up for Mr. Rent to come through and kill it, right? So because Taye was in Rent for years, right? So.
Yeah. So you got a lot of theater actors. You got a lot of detectives who can just magically sing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm happy to have gone before him and not after. But he just sort of said, he has got to be, we want to have fun, but he just can't be too good. But he's got to be good enough to kind of have, and everyone's drunk and having a good time at karaoke. So but it was kind of a wild thing to learn, because I learned the whole song, two enormous verses and everything. So. It was sort of a long weekend to kind of get that.
Do you have the footage of the entire performance? Have they released that to you?
I think a friend of mine sort of filmed a take of it, you know what I mean, from the set. But basically, shy of that, it was kind of it'll probably remain bootleg. Yeah.
Listen, hey, it's 2014. The way that people are expanding across industries and stuff, maybe you have a recording contract on your hands. You never know.
You never know.
With my 12-bar blues, yeah, right. Yeah, I think I'll keep my day job. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, the other interesting relationship here, obviously, English and Mulligan, that's going to develop forever. We will see this in every episode. But this whole Mulligan and Blunt situation, super creepy. You talk about the way things are shot. We never talked about this scene afterwards, but the scene when Blunt is at her house and he comes through to walk up to her, and he doesn't come into the light. He stays in the shadows behind that tree, and so his face, you can see him, but he's covered in shadows, which I thought was a great way to shoot it because he was creepy and aggressive and weird in that situation.
Totally, right? And you feel her thinking about her gun and her purse, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, what woman wants to come home and have a guy standing there and he knows where she lives? That's so creepy, right?
Yeah.
And how about Tom Felton's American accent, for goodness sakes? So good. He's so good, you know?
You forget he was in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You forget it's the same character.
I mean, he was telling me he started doing Harry Potter. He was 11 years old, right?
It's amazing.
So he sort of we've all grown up with him, right?
Yeah.
And he's just such a sweet guy, and I had such high regard for him. I just love what he's doing. It's just he's so good in the part, and you like him, and he's winning, and you believe he's this tech guy, but he's also a shark, and
yeah, I agree. He makes me feel good and bad, depending on what's happening in the episode.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like rooting for him, and other times I'm like, no.
He makes me feel all bad. I'm Warren Daniels.
Right? Are you a Doberman? Is that what
Yeah, I'm like Warren Daniels. He makes me feel all bad.
Oh no, yeah, he makes me feel all bad, but I feel for him. I'm not gonna lie. I'm rooting for Eric in a way.
yeah, right.
I kind of am.
Right.
I know.
Right.
It's bad. Is that bad?
Well, judging by the
He's
fact,
cute, right?
A little bit.
considering Mark Strauss's alibi held out, I think that is bad. I think you might be looking at the mark.
He just had some foreplay with her. Okay, that is what we are told, and that is what I'm sticking with.
Right.
I am rooting for Eric. Go, Eric. We're gonna find out that it's not him. It's not him.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, and obviously we were not going to ask for spoilers because you can't give them anyways. But do you see, how far in advance do you see scripts? Do you only see your scenes that you're in, or do you get the entire script before you work?
No, we got the script and we would all race and rip it open and go like, "Whoa!" and we'd all talk about it, right? I think there may have been some characters that don't get the whole thing, and then I know as they got to the last 2 or 3, they started watermarking them very carefully and really kind of monitoring them very carefully, and so on the other show I do, Once Upon a Time, they also do that with that, especially as you get to the end and sort of some of the finales, because people get so protective of those stories. So, but yeah, I mean, they were right to do that, obviously. But none of us knew until the very end where it was going to go. They didn't say. None of us, knew which direction it was going to kind of go. And none of us knew who was going to be back next year or not, right?
Yeah.
So which way is it going to go, right?
Did it end? I don't know if you can say this. Did it end, hypothetically speaking, that it wouldn't continue? Do you think that season 1 ends and it could end there? Like if you didn't do a second season, the viewers would be happy.
Well,
as to how it ended.
let me put it to you this way, because someone asked me about this specifically, and I think I can say this. A fantastic show, which is The Killing, which is somewhat similar, right?
Yeah.
In terms of this, which, again, I didn't invent this, but, obviously a lot of people were very concerned about or very upset about how it sort of didn't end. I can say that there will be clarity in this. So there won't be questions. I think you'll have clarity.
Good.
There you go. That's the ultimate tease.
We'll find out that Eric is innocent.
I don't know
That's
about
what
that. Give us
we're
another few weeks. Speaking of potential murderers, let's talk about my guy, David, the other David Hertzberg, the attorney, who, I'm telling you guys, that's my guy. He has motive. He had opportunity.
Besides the
And he's got a ponytail, right?
Besides the ponytail.
The creepy ponytail, right? I love
That's
that.
my guy. But we see him in court today struggling with criminal law because it's not what he does, because Blunt had Warren Daniels fired. Or not fired. Blunt had Warren Daniels leave the case. And then we see kind of David struggling. The first thing that I'm interested in is the mayor meeting, though, which I think everybody's going to forget about because so much other stuff happened, but it's one of the first scenes in the show. It's the $1.6 million in bundled campaign contributions, which is huge in a mayoral race, even in a big city. What do we make of that? I know you know a lot better than we do, but what do you make of that?
It happened so fast. I'm glad we're talking about it. It happened so quick. I was under the impression that he obviously knows some stuff. Your guy, David.
David, okay.
Knows some stuff that the rest of the population does not know. Because when he threw that in his face, got up and left, it was like, you have power. You don't just do that to a mayor. You must know something for you to be able to treat the mayor like that and walk out and take a bottle of wine with you. Come on. I'm thinking that there's something that we don't know, and this is his way of kind of manipulating the system. Obviously, we saw that the judge switched when they came out for Eric Blunt's trial. We had a different judge, and the woman that was with the mayor during that meeting, she was there, saw that it was a different judge, walked out, and then DA Jackie was real mad. She was real mad. So clearly, there's something. He has some sort of connections. He knows something that we don't know about this mayor guy.
Is it? I don't know if you're making it too complicated. You're probably right, because it has to be complicated. But I think it might be almost as simple as $1.6 million, money talks in politics. And this is David Hertzberg saying, you have this money if you call the dogs off Blunt. If you don't call the dogs off, you're not going to get this money. And we'll put a little political pressure on you to not follow through with this case, because it's flimsy at best, is what his argument is going to be. And the judge changing, and maybe some other things will change down the road, are the way for the mayor and the way for the city of San Francisco to kind of call off the dogs, A, without losing face, because I know Jackie does not want to look bad because she has an election coming up, and B, still getting that money that the mayor's going to want for his campaign and whatever. But the problem with getting that money is the mayor's then beholden to Eric Blunt. And Lord knows where that goes down the future, because if he actually is the murderer and you're the mayor beholden to a murderer, that's a different set of problems. Right. We're speaking way too far in the future, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. I mean, you're 5 in, right? So we did 10, so you figure you're halfway there, right?
Halfway.
Oh man, I can't. We'll get to predictions in a minute. Let's hold off on predictions. We'll get there in just a second. But what about that polygraph test with Eric Blunt? I know, Raphael, you reveled at that scene too, at how good the polygraph giver was, how good he was, how calm he was, how specific he was in what he did.
So good.
And how well Eric played off him, how well Tom Felton plays off him, being just him, who he is, being Eric Blunt in that situation.
You know, there's so many. I mean, the casting is amazing, just through the ranks. I mean, the couples therapist, and she's. I did a movie with her years ago, and she's incredible. And the obviously the this polygraph guy and all of the support. The guy, the Chinese guy at the pickle factory. I mean, there's just think about. I mean, from an acting point of view, they're also good, and you go like, oh, I know that guy. It just seems so spot on, right?
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch because, again, as you said, I haven't seen the scenes. It was the first time I got to watch them with you. Really, sort of, we got to watch it live together. So I only sort of read it, and so watching it come to life, it was really fun.
Yeah, it's something. The polygraph really interested me too, and the way Daniels was. Daniels is such a Doberman, like he's been saying. He is such a Doberman, and he will not budge until Blunt meets his demands. My issue with Blunt is Blunt keeps talking money and says, I'll pay you $10 million, I'll pay you whatever. Daniels is successful. I know money talks to a lot of people, but he's successful enough, and he can't possibly be that enticed by the $10 million. There's got to be a separate reason for doing this. Maybe it's just the challenge of being a defense attorney for this guy and corralling him in and winning an unwinnable case.
I'm with you on that. I agreed. I thought money wasn't gonna do anything for this Doberman.
Because he's old not to get, but he's old. He's been working forever. He's made a ton of money.
He probably has all the money he needs. Yeah. So what are you gonna do with $10 million? I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's more of a challenge. And he's just interested.
But on Blunt's perspective, he has nothing else to give. He has nothing else to give but money. And the problem is he almost has too much money in the sense that it's become a crutch for him. He can't give loyalty. He can't give any significant favor in return. It's just a financial transaction. If you don't want $5 million, I'll give you $10 million, which sounds cool. We'd all like to have $10 million to be able to give away. But I think it's actually such an empty existence that you can't do anything else but have your money talk. And you're essentially buying friends, influence, people to bounce ideas off of, people to listen to. And that's got to be a really, really lonely kind of existential existence on his end, which I think is why you see him as depressed as he is.
I love that he's just like nodding.
He just sees us here. He's like,
yep.
It's great to hear you.
Yeah.
It's just great.
We're probably way overthinking this, but that's okay.
No, it's so cool. I mean, again, this is what's great is that they've given you a lot to chew on, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of meat in the bone, right? So, which is great.
Yeah, you're telling me. The one thing about Blunt that I do want to talk about is when Bill Wilkerson, who, by the way, JB, one of our hosts who's not here, it is his contention that Bill the pilot is the murderer. That is his thing. He's been going with that since day one. So,
and that was cool. That scene with him and his ex-wife, and then the video and all that. Was like, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
It was
well, where did she get that?
I don't know. Tell us. Who is it?
I think Blunt sent it to her. I think Eric Blunt sent it to her.
Because of what they said, that interaction that they had, where he's like, I have your back.
Yes.
You have mine.
Yeah. I think Eric Blunt, this is part of the thing with money, part of the thing with growing up as an orphan with the mom and the dad, the story we've kind of already been through with the two of them. The dad's obviously dead and the mom's been dead. I think Blunt is so warped with what he views as loyalty and friendship and relationships and stuff like that. We know he's got some unhealthy relationships anyways. Excuse me. And I think he is so warped on that he is desperate for quote-unquote loyalty from people like Bill, but it's not a two-way street for him because he's never experienced loyalty before. So he wants people to bow to him, Blunt does, because he's so, powerful in Silicon Valley. And he wants people to do his bidding, and he'll turn around and say, oh, I've got your back too. Wink, wink, sure I do. When actually, Blunt is in it for Blunt. And he wants to look at loyalty from other people because he thinks he deserves it, but he's not ready to give it out. And if you're not ready to give it out, you can't get it back.
I disagree.
Really?
I don't think it was Eric. I think you need to point it to your ponytail attorney.
To David?
Yes.
Well, that would be interesting,
what you
too.
think?
That's what I think. Yeah, I think he would send it. I don't
interesting,
trust
too.
this guy, but I don't think he's the murderer. I just don't trust him.
Do you trust anybody with a ponytail?
Never. Never. No.
Well, then there you go. You're biased against him to begin with. I think Blunt is not a friend to anybody. And it's not all his fault because of how he grew up, because of where he is, and because of the industry that he is in. And I know one problem that I have with the show actually is kind of a stereotypical way to portray Silicon Valley with the way that Blunt is. And maybe they do this just because it's an easy thing for people to kind of bite off and see and say, okay, this is the quintessential Silicon Valley young hotshot, lots of money, whatever, which is fine. But if we're going to portray him like that, this is a guy who will do whatever it takes to win and get whatever he can to get, and he doesn't care who he hurts in the process. And he's not loyal to his lawyer, David. He's certainly not loyal to Bill, and I think he gave the video to Bill's wife to cause a rift between them. And he's certainly not going to be loyal to anybody else. The video specifically, here is my motive for Blunt. He gives the video to Bill's wife. She leaves him. She divorces him or whatever's going to happen there. Bill turns desperate, and Blunt said, mi casa es su casa. Well, guess what? Bill then becomes beholden to Blunt, and he has to do Blunt's bidding and do whatever he wants because Bill feels like Blunt took me in, Blunt helped me out, I owe him now. Little does he know Blunt created this snowball. Just my opinion. I think he's the guy. Not for the murder, but for this.
You make a very good argument. But no,
I was actually in the writer's room. No, I'm just
right? I was listening to them read over the episode. I think that Eric Blunt's character is purposely shown or shot, or the way he is done on purpose for us to think he's guilty. But I don't think he is. So all the things like you're saying, oh, he's only in for himself. I think that's just his personality, and I think they purposely want you to think that, so that they're making us go one way, but then the show's gonna take a twist and a turn, and I'm gonna tweet him, and I'm gonna be like, "See, I told you."
I wonder what the poll. I mean, if they were to take a poll on Twitter at this point, who they would think it would.
That's a good question. Actually, we'll open it up right now. We'll do it at the end of the thing, but that's a good question. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit comment below. Tell us. What do you think? Not only who the murderer is, because we've talked about that, but what do you think of Blunt, and how are they portraying Blunt? Because that's an interesting question in and of it. What you were asking is, are we seeing Blunt's whole story?
Right.
I think we are. If you think we're being maybe led down a different path, that's really interesting. I guess we'd have to see evidence to that, though. And in 5 episodes, we haven't seen a lot of evidence.
Right, but we also haven't seen evidence that he's guilty. It's the same thing.
Oh, I disagree with you there.
He was there. He was there with Cindy, but we don't really know anything. They keep trying to. And I feel like if they had solid evidence, they would have already had it. They wouldn't be in the situation that they are. Dear Jackie wouldn't hate her life right now. You know what I mean?
She looked a little upset.
Yeah, she hates her life.
And he passed the polygraph test.
Exactly, and thank you. That's why you're here. Exactly.
Come back next week. Be on her team. You guys can argue against me.
No, it's so great to be in the middle. I love being here. It's like, wee!
It's a tennis match. You're just watching it go back and forth.
I love it.
On the first or second episode, I can't remember what we were arguing about. We argued about something literally for about a half hour. One very specific thing in one scene. It was we had to keep moving eventually. It was like, okay,
Right.
we're just not going to come to a consensus on this one. Let's just
Agree to
keep it.
disagree.
Let's talk about Mark Strauss now, because to your discredit, I suppose, Mark Strauss's alibi was discredited, or was confirmed because of Sally Smoot and this doctor and stuff. Such a funny scene with her. That was such unbelievable acting.
Love that scene.
It's the idea as an actor, and I'm certainly no expert, but it's the idea of having a an underlying emotion that you need to let a little bit out of, but you can't do it too much, and you can't hide it too much. And so you kind of walk that line where she has to let the audience know that, you know, the sweat's starting to come and the heat's being turned up, but she can't go over the top because she's trying to hide it from the detectives. And it's such a fun emotion to watch actors do something like this. It's got to be very difficult as an actor. Maybe it's easy, but it's got to be difficult as an actor to have one underlying emotion, but having to mask it with a second one.
Oh, she played it beautifully.
It was
just
great.
Beautifully. She killed it.
And it's so fun to watch Mulligan in English again and again and again. On this episode and always, there's some hard asses. They will go good cop, bad cop. They'll go bad cop, bad cop. They play so well against everybody. It's fun to watch. They did it with Strauss in the interrogation room.
Yeah,
they did it with her and threatening to impound her car and doing whatever else. And it is so, it's uncomfortable scenes and it's serious scenes, but like you can't help but chuckle when you watch it because it's two cats playing with a mouse. You know, it's exactly what it is. I love to see the two of them do that. And those to me are the best scenes in this thing where the two of them kind of get to be detectives. You know, and the rest of anybody in the San Francisco homicide unit kind of gets to be detectives and gets to do what we do. I'm a homicide detective and this is what I do, and it's fun to watch them work because they turn the heat up on people, and it's just
their chemistry is on at all times. It's not just when it's tension and they have those feelings going back and forth. It's when they're interrogating somebody. The chemistry is just there between them.
Yeah.
It's just like Law and Order.
And allow me to say is that's a thing that, you know, you can write on the page, you can try and direct it in the scene, but it's one of those like either you is or you ain't. You know what I mean? You heard it here. You is, you ain't, and they is. Definitely, they got chemistry, and it's fantastic to watch. It's like I remember watching the pilot, going, whoa, that's just. I mean, they're great on the screen together, and again, of course, you know, you can only imagine the lists and the things and the names they go through, and you know, probably they suffered of these decisions, you know, and it works, which is, you know, again, really, really great. In the scenes where they need it, which is like in the bar, but just in the scenes where they don't necessarily need it, it's still there.
It's still there. You can see they work very well together. I love them as a pair. I think it was very, very well cast, and I'm glad it wasn't somebody like that we were expecting. Maybe somebody that's already on TV all the time. You know, like Taye Diggs, we don't know him to be on television. We know him for movies, we know him for theater. So I like that it was somebody different. And I like that it wasn't a stereotypical typecast detective. Exactly. There's plenty of detectives. Nothing against Law and Order. I love watching it. But kind of those type of actors who you see and you say, oh, that person looks like a detective. Mm-hmm. I look at Taye Diggs and I think of a lot of roles and I don't think detective. Yeah. So to see something like this, it humanizes it a little bit. Actually, pretty much every detective in that unit. I don't think any of you are stereotypically, oh yeah, that guy's a detective. I could imagine him on stuff. It's sort of like I look at every homicide unit detective in that and I say, that's an interesting casting. Okay. Even the chief of detectives, Jackie Perez's boyfriend or whatever, we haven't seen a ton of him, but I look at people like that and it's like, huh. Yeah. I kind of like it.
I totally agree. It's a really interesting casting all the way through. Yeah. Yeah.
Blunt on down, and Warren Daniels and all those guys. I could watch Warren Daniels talk all day.
You love him.
Long.
He's brilliant.
He's brilliant. My Lord. He's just... And so calm and so cool and such a just
I totally agree.
What a predator.
I totally agree.
See, he terrifies me more than Eric Blunt.
Oh yeah, but he's not the murderer. Unless you want to get crazy with your prediction.
No, he's not the murderer. Okay, that's fine. I know that. But I'm just saying he scares me. He terrifies me for my life.
The way real attorneys do. I mean, they like, you know, they're trained killers. Yeah. I mean, they may not kill anyone, but they're trained killers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just watching him on the screen, I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, let's get to, Raphael, I want to talk about some other stuff you're doing. I know you got a lot going on. Before we get to that, I want to do predictions, though. So let's cue that one up and do a couple predictions, you guys.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So, Raphael, one of the predictions we do every week, and I can't have you predict this because you know how this ends and you're not going to release anything like this to us. But we always, every week, kind of go around the table and say, okay, who's your killer this week? Because it changes for a lot of people a lot of times. So, Monse, I'm just going to ask you straight up. Seeing what you saw this episode in addition to the first four, who's the killer?
I'm going to have to go back to my last week I said Jeremy. Jeremy, that was who I said.
Jeremy, the other computer.
Yes,
I saw that on Twitter too.
Mm-hmm. I thought definitely I was like Jeremy, but he wasn't in this episode, so that doesn't work for me. I think I'm gonna go back to my first one, Bill Wilkerson, Bill, the pilot.
Bill Wilkerson. Okay.
Yes, and see that even makes more sense because what if Eric did send the wife this video, right? But he did it because he knows he killed Cindy. So he's like, you killed the girl I was dating. I'm going to screw over your marriage.
Oh, that's interesting.
Boom.
So Bill kills Cindy.
Boom. That's a TNT noodle. You know, boom.
We know drama.
We know drama. Boom.
We know drama.
So Bill kills Cindy, you're saying. Eric finds out or was there or whatever it is Eric knows. So because Eric actually loved Cindy and had no intention of killing her, he sought revenge on Bill and sent the video
I'm
of
helping
Bill
your case here,
with
yeah.
Cindy to Bill's wife.
Yes. And that
So
would
here's
make,
my question. If Bill's having sex with Cindy on video, why doesn't Eric just kill Bill to get revenge on Bill for treating Cindy that way?
because he doesn't want to go to jail. He said it to the Doberman, to your favorite character. He's like, I spent a couple days in jail. I don't want to be there. He knows that, you know what I mean? And that whole argument that they had where he was like, I have your back, you have my back, that even, to me, shows that more. That he knows maybe that he killed Cindy, and Bill knows that he knows, but he thinks he's just going to be quiet the whole time. Am I overanalyzing?
How far off is
No,
she?
I mean,
know, right?
he's asking you to analyze it, so I think
Okay.
it's cool.
Okay. I'm going to stick with David Hertzberg. He's my guy. I think he had motive in the sense of how much he dislikes Eric Blunt to frame Eric Blunt for this murder. I think he had opportunity. We'll learn more about him. And I think he's got sort of the means. I mean, he's a successful attorney. I think he probably has enough connections. If he didn't do it himself, I think he ordered it. I know he's a dark horse candidate, but I said him week 1, and I'm just going to stick with him. I'm going to ride my horse till the end. I might finish in last place. I'm sure Raphael's like, this guy is so far off. It's not David at all. But
We probably both are real far.
oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it's the simplest answer. It's probably Eric.
He's the killer.
Wow.
Don't touch my juice.
Yeah, that was it. She touched the cleanse juice. That's a great point. Any other predictions from you, Monse? Maybe relationship stuff or anything other than the killer?
No, I'm actually rooting right now for English and Mulligan. I'm rooting for them.
To be a thing, to be an item?
To figure it out. To not be in the middle. You know, because they're going to be in the middle for a little bit until they discuss things, and not saying that I want you to show us in an episode them talking it out for 2 hours, but I hope that they figure it out. Because if they can make it work, go for it. I'm down for it. But if they realize, no, then just let's move on. I just don't want it to be in the middle for like too long.
Interesting. See, I think it's not going to be in the middle for too long because I think Mulligan is more into English than English is into Mulligan. And I think Mulligan's going to come to a problem here. Not to say that she's desperate, but we have seen multiple scenes of her now dating people, going around on these horrible dates with guys. She had that weird date with Eric Blunt that wasn't actually a date, but he thinks it was. But she has all these situations with guys, and not to say she's desperate for it, but she's definitely looking for something. And I think she's found something in English, in the sense that when you were a detective, and they've played this up a little bit on her dates, people say, you know, these guys will say, what do you do for a living? She's like, I'm a detective in the homicide unit. And all the guys are kind of like, what? Like, what are you talking about? It's such a hard thing to do, and it's such a hard thing to know. And I don't, know any detectives in real life, but it's got to be such a hard and weird job that you need somebody in a relationship who understands it and understands your hours. Well, guess who understands her hours? Her partner. And guess who understands what she goes through? Her partner. And guess who's been there as a friend with her daughter and all this other stuff? Her partner. And I think, don't you point at me. And I think Mulligan is way into English romantically. And I think he, more than her, is going to be able to take a step back and say, we shouldn't have kissed. That was a mistake. My wife just died. I've got all this stuff going on. I can't be with you, whatever. This is inappropriate. And there's going to be a huge clash between the two of them because she's going to want him and he does not reciprocate.
Tell him he's wrong.
I take the 50.
All right, hey, that's it for predictions. Before we go to Raphael, tell us a little bit about other stuff you're doing. I know you have an environmental nonprofit, Green Wish. I just saw the website today, saw the video and stuff like that. You and Ed Begley Jr. started this thing.
Yeah, basically, the simplest way to explain it is maybe you feel like I do when you pick up the paper and you go, oh wow, the bees, and there's the whales, and there's like the climate change, and there's the like all this stuff that we see in the air in Hong Kong, and you just go on and you just feel horrible, and you think, what the heck can I do? And you feel sort of overwhelmed, and then you get to like, oh well, screw it, can't do anything because it's so bad, it's all gonna collapse anyway. This is an answer to that. This is an attempt to answer that. And essentially what we did was we created a nonprofit that actually supports other nonprofits that are local and that are green. So basically what we do is if you want to set up a chapter in your city, wherever it is in the US, you can actually, we will give you the tools. We'll let you work within our EIN number. We'll get you all the stuff, free banking, everything, so that you can create essentially a nonprofit in your city. And then all the money you raise goes to local nonprofits right in your area. So in LA, we've got Earth, Air, Water, Sustainable Education that are all supported. And we've got chapters in Kansas, in Missouri, in Denver, about to be St. Louis, and Massachusetts we're talking to, and there are more and more cities that are sort of contacting us and saying, we're interested, we want to do this. And so what it does, it's that classic sort of thing of sort of saying, as opposed to giving someone a fish, you give them a fishing rod, and you actually allow them to kind of make a difference. And again, you know where the money goes. You get to identify the smaller nonprofits in your community that need the money, and they really need the money. And they're not the ones with the big fancy buildings in downtown London. I mean, these are the ones that are really sort of doing sort of shovel-ready community work. And Ed loved this idea. It's sort of an umbrella of green, and he came on as the face of the organization along with Rochelle, his wife, Carson Bigley, and you know, it was a great honor to work with him because he is, you know, sort of connected with this environmental conversation for so long. And but it's a way to kind of really try and make a difference one little step at a time.
And I really like this idea that I believe you said 90% of every dollar, 90 cents on every dollar goes back into a community. And it's we talk about this a lot. I have a lot of AfterBuzz fans know Stefan Wallace, who hosts a ton of different shows. He has a nonprofit here in LA. I recently did a documentary following him around with his nonprofit. But the reason I mention it is he's a very, very small nonprofit working with homeless and stuff like that. And his big idea is these smaller nonprofits know how to stretch every dollar so much differently than the big ones do, and the big ones are needed, and there's nothing wrong with these large nonprofits, but bureaucracy takes over and there's a lot of things. So this idea of smaller nonprofits getting this money and really literally stretching every cent locally, maybe in a better way than a big one may have, you know, eyes on the ground or whatever. A small one may know exactly what needs to get done.
Right, and you figure, again, they're community-based, and they really sort of, you know, can make a difference in that area. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's just so much need out there, right?
Yeah.
There's and my feeling, both as a father and then as sort of a concerned, you know, I mean, I never considered myself an environmentalist, but I certainly cared about, you know, the environment. I found it was something that I gravitated to. We all have our passions. I think that we can all get sort of environmental apathy, which is where we just shut down. And this was a way to kind of try and give people a little hope, a little encouragement, and then you can see it because it's community based, and it seemed like a great way to go. So I've been very encouraged by how this message has traveled, and people seem to sort of really pick up on it and are starting chapters now.
So tell me about Los Angeles chapter. I walk into a store. There's a card there that says Greenwich is a part of this. So what do? I give money on top of my bill? How does it work for the regular person?
It's a similar. I mean, we've seen it many times before. It's, you know, $135. You add that onto your thing. But you know, in other cities, for example, we do we partner with events. There you know, different sort of parties or celebrations or things. Any way in which you want to raise money, whether it be even working with specific sponsors or people who want to donate just because they feel passionate about it. But as opposed to helping one, you're helping five, right? Yeah. And what's cool about it is that then retailers love it because they don't seem like they're picking a favorite. They're really sort of, but they're saying, hey, this is community-based giving. We care about our community and we care about green. So that's a nice message for them to be also be communicating. So it works for multiple people on multiple levels, I should say. The nice thing also is that then the retailers who then host the cards in their store, they get a tax-deductible letter for the money that they raise. So it also helps their bottom line, which is nice too.
Yeah, it is greenwish.com, correct?
That's correct.
Greenwish.com. We will link that up on YouTube as well, and obviously tweet that stuff because we are all Twitter users. I do have to tell you, Raphael.
Yes.
Let's talk about this.
I tweeted you this morning that you were going to be on the show. She tweeted you this evening, and yet you retweeted her.
I told him it's because I'm prettier, and he refused to believe it. He told me he was prettier.
No, I agreed with you. That's certainly probably part of what it is.
Maybe it's the timing is everything too, right?
I'm just saying. I'm not complaining.
You're cute.
I'm not complaining. I'm just stating facts. This is what I do here. I'm just throwing facts out there.
Mea culpa. I'm gonna race right home and retweet it as soon as we're done. It's burning in my phone right now.
Have him in my back pocket. That's what I wanted. What else are you working on? Obviously, you're on Once Upon a Time. We do that show here on AfterBuzz. I think it kicks butt because most AfterBuzz shows do. What else are you doing? Anything big coming up that you can release? Can we see you in movie opposite Brad Pitt next week, maybe?
Brad and I are talking, but it's still, yes, no, not quite yet. But basically where we are is that Murder in the First obviously is tied up a lot of time, and then I will be going back to work. Looks like in Once Upon a Time, as well as Murder in the First, and I'm in that sort of wild position which I've never been in my career, and I've done this for a little while. To be on 2 shows at the same time, which has been incredible. I'm producing some things, which has been great. And I produced this one climate change video, which has actually gotten some nice play. Caltech University here has been sort of promoting, which has been really cool. Which is a very a wonderful badge of sort of credibility, I should say. We work with one of their scientists about climate change, as well as there's several other things that I'm working on, but I'm a little pregnant with, and I can't say it yet as much as I want to. But there's some really cool things. I'm not pregnant actually at the moment, but you heard it live here. He's pregnant. Okay, no. There's some things that I'll be able to actually tweet to you probably very soon.
There
so
you go.
as soon as I know, then I'll be able to tell you. But yeah, I mean, I'm working on the nonprofit, and and currently obviously sort of going back and forth between these 2 shows.
Tell me a little bit about these 2 shows, because you've had such a long career from our perspective and such a successful career. We look at like IMDb and stuff and we say, man, he's been in everything, he's been whatever. But in your perspective, is it good now to not just be on a ton of shows, but to find 2 where you sort of almost find a home and say, I know that, assuming they keep getting picked up and whatever, I can be on these shows for a few years, I can establish myself and then take the next step?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, being an actor, there are more people who want places at the table than there are actually places to sit, right? So I am so grateful for the opportunities I've had, and obviously to be able to have made a career and gone through different phases, of when I was a young kid, certain roles that came to me, and obviously as you mature and things happen to your face and your hairline and all sorts of things, that you begin to sort of, other roles come to you, and the fact that I've been able to continue to sort of find really not just work, but really good work. I mean, obviously Once Upon a Time is an astonishing show. Seems like it's only sort of growing and growing and growing in terms of its audience and its worldwide audience. These sort of fairy tales seem to translate across language barriers in a way that some other American entertainment doesn't. I mean, I get tweets from, Poland and from Russia and from China and from, Japan and South America. It's incredible how vast that audience is, as well as then also then to work with then not only Stephen Bochco and Eric Lodal, 2 incredible writers, but then this cast. I mean, I've worked with a lot of wonderful actors over the years. You, at the end of the day, you hope to be able to work with players who are great at what they do and who love to play a hearty game of tennis, as it were. You get in the court and you want to play. And this is, again, in both cases, I feel like I just won the lottery. I pinch myself, like I can't believe it. I can't believe that I'm in this place where I get to go work with one incredible group of people and then another group of people.
Yeah, speaking about that, how do you change? You're Jiminy Cricket on Once Upon a Time. How do you go from Jiminy Cricket, okay, I'm going to go be Jiminy Cricket for the day, tomorrow I'm going to go be a detective? How do you do that? How does it take more effort than as somebody who doesn't, as an audience, does it take more effort than what we see? Because it seems like you could just do it. Like you could just every day be a new character. But yeah. Is there something that do you think about it? Do you really, is it easier now that you've developed maybe one character being Jiminy Cricket for not just one season like you're doing for Murder in the First? Is it different because you've been doing it for a little longer? This one's newer.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, number one is obviously that's what we do, right? I mean, we do go. I mean, I have a couple of appointments tomorrow where I'm already working in my head about these things that I'm walking in the room with, you're constantly sort of absorbing and digesting these parts and then moving through them. Obviously, what makes a great character is the great writing. So what they've done with Jiminy Cricket is they've written a really complex, interesting character that thankfully isn't just dependent on him being goody two shoes, hey, gee whiz, do the right thing, let your conscience be your guide. They actually created a character that came out of this terrible backstory, horrible, awful,
which
kind
is
of,
not true. Which is not true.
and then he found his conscience by virtue of sort of having done the wrong thing, and then have sort of really wanted to do the right thing. Again, what's so cool about this show, Murder in the First, is that you have, in this case, you walk on the set and you've got this whole thing, this world created for you. They hand you your weapon. They give you your badge, and there's certain things that kind of, you just kind of lean into, and they become kind of posts for you to sort of hold on to kind of sort of find your way through. So that's what's been so great. It really helps you kind of make it through.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, because you're saying good writing comes good acting, and I don't believe that. I think you can write something good, and if the actor is not right, if the actor is not good, it won't showcase. And I think you need to give yourself more credit, because in all the things you've done that I've at least seen, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't seen everything you've done. You've done a lot of stuff. I'm very jealous. But out of everything I've ever seen you in, I've always believed you. You've never been an issue with me. You're very versatile, which is, very difficult to pull off in Hollywood. There's so many options out there. Everyone is an actor nowadays, especially here in LA. Everyone is an actor. You go to New York, everyone's a theater actor. But you have successfully done so many different roles. How? Like, it's just amazing to me. Not just movies, TV shows, you do voiceovers, video games. Yeah. How do you live? Oh, you're a father? How do you do it? I can barely feed myself and get to work and then come to AfterBuzz. How do you do it? And you have 2 kids, right?
Yeah.
You have a dog? Because that's another kid if you have a dog.
I don't have a dog.
Okay.
I barely have plants, but I do teach, and I love that, and obviously, I mean, look, I love being busy. I thrive on it, and it's been great. And obviously, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to have perspective on yourself. Thank you for what you're saying. It's very kind. I mean, look, you bring. I love what I do. I find it sort of endlessly fascinating, trying to sort of find your way into the head of a character and make a connection to him and make some sort of emotional sense of that, and that I think is what what really is kind of our job as actors. That's what I encourage when I teach as well. And then I don't know what you just kind of, there's some place in your head where you go and you kind of just sort of you jump in, and
He's just gifted. Is what he's saying.
I would say. Or a little bit crazy. I don't know.
Well, seriously, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
come
really
back
fun.
sometimes. Come back for
really cool to hear you talk. I mean, it's so spirited. I love it. I love that you could kind of go through that. I mean, to be able to sit here, I have to say, it's really cool.
You should see us without a guest, because we'll go 55 minutes on maybe the littlest thing or two in an episode.
Seriously?
Awesome.
Like
It's
the
so fun.
smallest
I feel
thing.
like I'm in the catbird seat here getting to watch
no,
it. It's like, bing, bing, bing. It's really great.
I'm just nervous to give out predictions in front of somebody who knows what's going on.
Right?
Because he's looking at me like, no, you're totally wrong. It's not
No,
Hertzberg.
not at all. I mean, I it's fast. It's really cool. I mean, hopefully I had enough of a poker face where you can sort of feel like, there you go.
No spoilers. So producers, he didn't give us anything, so you don't need to fire him or whatever. He didn't give us anything,
Nothing.
unfortunately. Oh, well. Hey, Raphael, before we go, where can we find you? Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are. I know you're a prolific tweeter, so where can they find you?
Yeah, it's a wacky name. It's Raphael Sbarge. So you can find me there. You can also find me, of course, on Instagram. I've got a Facebook fan page too, if you want.
I gotta follow you on Instagram. So there we go.
Oh, we're
Cool.
Yep.
What about you, Monse? Twitter?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Monse Balanos.
And I'm on Twitter at Bobby DeMuro, on Instagram at Mr. Bobby DeMuro, because that is the formal social network. Don't laugh at me.
Mr.
And remember, guys, last thing, the Every Girl's Guide to Diet and Fitness, Maria's new book is out in stores right now and on Amazon.com and all those good places. And greenwish.com. Your nonprofit, greenwish.com. We will link that up on YouTube. Good stuff there, a good intro video and a ton of information, a ton of places you can help out or get involved if you want to with that. So greenwish.com. That's it this week on Murder in the First. Raphael, thank you very much.
Keep watching.
Coming out. This is awesome. Keep watching.
Yeah.
We will be back next Monday. Marina and JB will be here. They will be back from the holiday. I promise. That's it this week on AfterBuzz, guys. Good night.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.